elsewhere. The tremor measures 8 on the Richter scale, and its impact is felt as far as Taipei and Bangkok. Early May and Cyclone Nargis hits Myanmar, killing up to 140,000 people and leaving 1 million homeless. The UN blasts Myanmar's military government, saying its refusal to let in foreign aid workers to help victims is unprecedented in the history of humanitarian work and worsens the situation. 10 days later, on May the 12th, a devastating earthquake strikes China, killing nearly 70,000 people, leaving 5 million homeless and 4,000 children orphaned. Wenchuan County in Sichuan province bears the brunt of the disaster. A local official warns many people are feared dead after rows of houses collapse in the city of Dujiangyan near the epicenter. The impact of the tremor is felt throughout China and the region. Taiwan's Central Weather Bureau said it took about 8 minutes for the quake wave to reach the island.
It was kind of like the kind of turbulence you have on an aircraft, and it was some lateral shaking.
Even the Thai capital, Bangkok, feels the impact of the quake more than 3,000 kilometers away. Back in Sichuan, more than 500,000 houses are toppled. One by one, people dead or alive are pulled out of the rubble in Dujiangyan. Survivors still are found more than 24 hours after the quake. Rescue work is slow and tedious. Rescuers removed debris from toppled buildings by hand for fear of further collapses. In the epicenter in Wenchuan, there's an exodus from the town after a series of aftershocks, some of them reaching more than 6 on the Richter scale. In the Tibetan Chiang Autonomous Prefecture of Aba, more than 2,000 tourists are trapped. Among them, these cable car passengers who were stranded for more than 24 hours. Most of them are elderly Taiwanese, and one by one they're brought to safety. The broken roads to Bechuan in Sichuan are littered with giant boulders. Major roads are impassable, blocked by vehicles buried in landslides. Troops managed to reopen some of the paths, and survivors in remote villages slowly make their way to safety. About 80% of the houses topple, and more than 1,000 people are buried alive when a school collapses. In Myanju, about 40 kilometers southeast of the epicenter, the death toll has reached 1,500. This is what's left of a primary school. More than 10 children were found alive. They are the lucky ones. An estimated 10,000 people remain unaccounted for. There are makeshift hospitals all over Sichuan province, and rescue work is hampered by a cut in water and electricity supplies. Premier Wen Jiabao, who arrived at the disaster zone 7 hours after the tremor hit overseas relief efforts. He does what he can to give a ray of hope to those buried under the rubble. Hold on, the rescue teams are on their way, he tells victims using a megaphone. He sees for himself the rescue effort at a school where more than 100 students were in classes when the building came down. The power of the massive earthquake hit the smaller towns and counties the hardest. At Juyuan Township, the secondary school is virtually unrecognizable. The middle and sides of the 3-story building cave in, leaving 2 bare stairwells. Fears of aftershock drive many from their homes, forcing them to seek refuge at open-air stadiums, and many ponder what's going to happen next and where they're going to go. The tremor also spreads to vast areas of Gansu, triggering mudslides in many parts of the province. Worst hit was the county of Longnan, where the ground literally opens up. Houses collapse. Many counties are without power and telecommunication is disrupted. In Chongqing, scores of people are killed. Among them, those buried under the rubble of what used to be a school in Liangpin. The army in Beijing and Tianjin gradually bring in about 28 million yuan's worth of food, blankets, medicine and electricity generators. The United Nations offers to send in rescue teams, but this is easier said than done.
So transportation and access to disaster-hit region is a difficult issue for us. So now conditions is not yet ripe for us to allow international rescue teams to enter into China or to go to the disaster-hit area.
The People's Liberation Army directs the rescue effort. Soldiers gradually reach disaster areas cut off by broken roads and landslides in Sichuan province. Troops work overnight to reopen roads to the epicenter in Wenchuan as aftershocks and continuous rain hamper rescue efforts. The weather is on their side when morning comes on March 14th. And so began the long trek into the heart of the disaster zone, a township called Yingqiu, along broken bridges, past landslides. The loosened earth is a challenge even for the fittest, and some are unable to escape from the falling debris. Also making their way to Yingqiu are people whose loved ones are stranded. My entire family is there, said one woman. Earlier, soldiers were able to reach Yingqiu via the rivers. 300 people are brought to safety in this way, but only a quarter of the 12,000 residents are known to have survived. Blocked roads leading to one of the worst affected counties, Mianzhu, mean heavy machinery is unable to reach this collapsed school. Anxious parents watch as rescuers pull out more than 10 seriously injured children. Premier Wen Jiabao visits children in Mianyang orphaned by the earthquake. But no words of reassurance that her future would be taken care of could console one child. May 15th, and more than 20 townships and villages still cannot be accessed because of broken roads and landslides. At least 10 million people are homeless, and the possible spread of diseases is also threatening survivors. 110,000 soldiers are now involved in the rescue operation. Some of them parachuted into disaster areas that cannot be accessed in any other way. For rescuers who are able to carry on, this is a very disheartening mission. This group is working on what's left of a primary school. We hear the cries of children from under the rubble. Sometimes they're only a few meters away, but we just can't reach them, one person sighed. 3 of those they managed to pull out are already dead. May 16th, and President Hu Jintao sees for himself the scale of the devastation. In Mianyang, he meets with Premier Wen Jiabao, and they discuss strategies to speed up the operation. President Hu visits some of the worst hit areas of Sichuan. As Hu leaves, public security officers pushed and dragged away desperate family members who tried to plead their case. They also stopped our cameras from filming. Children are still buried under a kindergarten, and rescuers have stopped digging, she said. We just want to tell our leaders what's happening here. With each passing day and more bodies being recovered, there is rising concern for those who remain in the disaster zone. With bodies piling up and no running water, the region of Sichuan now faces the spectre of another killer, disease.
Measles, diarrhea, damaged cholera, and also diphtheria, things like that. The water supply and also the sanitation is also very severely damaged after the disaster.
Day 6, or May 17th, and a major scare in the hard-hit areas of Sichuan. Fears that a dam would burst forced the evacuation of thousands of people there. The massive evacuation halts much of the rescue work there. Still, more than 160 survivors were rescued throughout the devastation zone, including a German tourist who'd been trapped for 114 hours and a primary school girl who was trapped under her collapsed school. There's another natural disaster in China in 2008, a major snowstorm, and another man-made one in the form of milk powder. Meanwhile, unrest grips the Tibet Autonomous Region, but there is some joy as the nation hosts an impressive Summer Olympic Games. We'll have more on that